This Week in Radio Tech, episode 276, is brought to you by the full range of Axia X nodes, mic, stereo line, AES, GPIO, and the mixed signal X node. One-touch simple setup balanced with powerful AOIP connection options. By Zipstream, audio streaming processors and encoders. Choose hardware or software. And optional Omnia 9 processing. And by Lavo and the Crystal Clear virtual radio console. Crystal Clear is the console with a multi-touch touchscreen interface. During the 2015 NAB Radio Show in Atlanta, Charles Kinney opened the doors to the iconic WSB-AM transmitter site and threw a party. Nearly 80 engineers and friends showed up to see the current site and learn about the history of AM transmissions from here. Hey, welcome in. It's time for This Week in Radio Tech, the show where we talk about radio technology, everything from the microphone to, look at what's behind me, the transmitter. I'm at the WSB-AM 50,000 watt transmitter site. Welcome, South, brother. That's what WSB might stand for. We're here at the transmitter site at a party that Cox Radio and Charles Kinney have graciously put on for us. And the folks at Telos have paid for dinner. Everybody had dinner yet? Yeah. There's actually a lot of people. There's 47 engineers here all at the same time, and it's not the NAB. Well, actually, it is the NAB. That's why they're all here in town for the NAB Radio Show. I'm Kirk Harnack along with Chris Tobin in the studio. Chris, I'm sorry you're not here, buddy.
Oh, trust me, I am too, but there's somebody in the background with their fingers up, so I'm just going to wave back to them.
All right, well, Chris, I'm sure you're welcome to interject anytime you want to with questions or pithy comments.
Well, is that a Death Star behind you, that gray panel with the screen in it? I'm sorry. Death Star. I said that.
Yeah, I guess it is. We're gonna get a bit of a tour of the site. I uploaded a couple videos to Facebook already, to my personal Facebook account. If you're not friends with Kirk Harnack on Facebook, feel welcome to do that. You can look at the videos. Even if you're not friends with me, you can still look at the videos. Our show is brought to you by the folks at Axia and the Axia Mixed X node. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Also, the Zipstream product line from Telos for processing and encoding your streaming audio. And also by the folks at Lavo and the Lavo Crystal Clear multi-touch touchscreen audio console. So many audio over IP products, because that's where the world is going. And let's go ahead and just jump right in and get started with our first interview, if we could. We've got for you a guy that's been on the show before, no stranger to This Week in Radio Tech.
Hey, Kirk.
Come on in. How
you doing?
Are you in the shot? Yes, you are.
I'm in the shot.
Hey, let's get closer to the microphone.
All right.
There we go.
There we go.
Dulcet tones, man.
Indeed.
This is Scott Fybush.
WSB Atlanta.
If you don't know, Scott, what are you most famous for amongst engineers?
People may have heard of this little thing, the Tower Site calendar, now out in the 2016 edition.
So it's
brand new.
It's not too early to order mine?
It is not. They are available online right now.
I don't remember if I ordered mine yet or not.
We're going to get one tonight, one way or another.
Okay, well, I'll
Be sure to get it autographed.
You deserve to be well paid for these.
Well, thank you.
These are, and I love these. These are so sexy. Every month, you have a different tower on there. Oh, I need to hold that up a little bit more. And so you just snapped some pictures of this tower site here, didn't you?
This site I was actually out here about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And this site was in one of the earliest calendars.
You know, I have used some of your pictures with permission to promote this event.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Scott, the NAB Radio Show is going on right now. What's been a hot topic or two at the radio show?
There's been a little matter of the change of command at one of the biggest radio companies in America over at Cumulus.
Oh, that's headquartered right here in Atlanta.
Yes, it is. And
Okay.
everybody expected this was going to be Lou Dickey's, big homecoming show, right?
Ah, yeah.
And John Dickey, and all of a sudden, as of Tuesday, they were out of command there. Once again, just as when we had this conversation in Vegas, Voltaire and PPM.
That was a hot topic.
Been a big topic.
There was Jeff Stedman is here.
Yes,
also,
you're gonna
folks
have
at
Jeff on a
Nielsen
little bit.
were both of them gave back-to-back presentations.
They did a little break in between. It was amazing the number of people who were there.
It was standing room only.
It was not
Yeah.
even. It was like packed in standing room
Yeah.
only. It was tight. But it was the big news out of Nielsen on their end is they are upgrading the encoding system for PPM. They're going to have a new release software. They've been testing it very quietly in DC and Baltimore and a bunch of other markets. They're going to have it on the air, they say, by October, end of October in most of their markets. And this is going to get interesting now, they said by next year they are going to put their own monitoring boxes at stations, which of course affects the Voltaire.
Yeah.
So
Well,
this
this
is going to be interesting to watch this all play out.
I got to tell you, honestly, and I know this is the feeling of my colleagues
at 25/7 who designed and make the Voltaire, part of the TELUS Alliance. I know that, sure, everybody likes to make money. We're in the business to make a profit, whether you're WSB or Fybush.com, Northeast Radio Watch, or TELUS. Whatever's good for the radio industry, though, is good for us. And if everybody gets counted, if listeners get counted, it's good.
It is, but it's interesting because in the Nielsen presentation,
Yeah.
they showed that, okay, when we put this enhanced encoding in, all of a sudden AQH listening shot up by 15% or whatever their number was.
Ah.
And the question that I wanted to ask them was, so that acknowledges that the original system wasn't counting those listeners? Is that what you're telling us, really?
It did sound like they were trying to say, though, under certain conditions, certain audio, certain environments, they weren't.
Which I think you'll call real world
Yes,
conditions,
you might call that
probably.
real world. Yeah.
If you put a PPM in a lab, you're going to hear everything. They're saying now that it only needs to hear one set of encoding in a minute to be able to count that minute.
Ah. Okay.
Which is supposed to be an improvement over what they've been doing.
That's
until
different
now.
than the way it is now, you think?
Now I think they said it takes 4 for it to count, if I remember right. But it's going to be interesting to watch this play out. Now Jeff will tell you when he comes on the show. As he told me, he said, they've got the box now. So far, all that Nielsen has said is we will have the box next year, maybe. So it's going to be interesting to watch this play out. And of course, Voltaire has its new software out, the 2.0 and then 2.2 coming.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to talk about there. And then, of course, the dog that didn't bark, all this AM improvement stuff.
Oh.
The FCC this afternoon basically came here and said, we can't tell you anything. We don't know yet. Nothing has been decided. It does not sound like these AM stations are likely to get the translators that they so desperately want and need. So this has been going on, what is it, 5 years now, 6 years that they've been promising this? And we've heard nothing yet?
Wow. And if it wasn't for Ajit Pai, would there be any force in the FCC trying to move something forward?
There has been some movement. There's actually another commissioner now who's made the play for it. So, it's always easy, as one of my Washington lawyer friends once told me, you can always get 2 votes for anything on the commission.
Yeah.
It's getting that third one.
Gotcha.
That's always the tough one. So we shall see where this all goes.
Well, Scott, we got a bunch of people to talk to, and I really appreciate you stopping by.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much. And Northeast Radio Watch is your paywalled offering.
It is. It is available Fybush.com, FYBUSH, every Monday. All the news of what's happening in the Northeast.
Yeah.
And then Tower Side of the Week every Friday is free for the viewing at Fybush.com.
Cool. Tower Side of the Week. Good deal.
Check out all these stories of great tower sites around the nation.
You post those on Facebook, so a notification that you posted something.
They usually go up on Facebook. I've got a mailing list, too, on the website. You can sign up for the mailing list.
Okay.
You'll get an email every time something's posted.
Okay.
How cool is that?
Tower Side calendar for 2016. There you go.
Get one today.
What's your favorite tower in here?
I'll tell you, the neatest one in here, I think,
Yeah?
and I'm a little biased on this, but there is, check this out here. Everybody knows about the big Blawnox towers.
Yeah, like
WSM in Nashville.
Okay.
WLW in Cincinnati.
Yep. Used to be
All right.
WHAS in Louisville. There's fell down.
All right. Well, check this out.
That's a skinny looking Blawnox.
It's a little baby Blawnox. There were 3 of these in Central California.
Oh. And so where's that one at?
That was in Bakersfield. That's not even there anymore.
Wow.
There's one in Bakersfield, one in Tulare, and there's one that's still there in Stockton.
Wow. That's the deal.
Scott, learn something new tonight.
Thanks again, buddy.
Thank you, Kirk.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Hey, you're watching This Week in Radio Tech. I'm Kirk Harnack along with Chris Tobin in studio at Guys from Queen, the GFQ network. Hey, our show is brought to you in part by the folks at Axia. And if you'll give me a second, I'm going to grab this. This is an Axia X node, and I've got one right here in front of me that I can show off to you. What is an X node, and why would you need one anyway? Well, first we'll start with that. Most of the gear in your radio station doesn't have an audio over IP jack on it. Now, more and more stuff is getting it. Automation systems, profanity delays, phone systems, IP audio codecs, things like that are getting there. But still not everything does. You've got turntables, maybe. Maybe you've got a reel-to-reel machine you still use. Maybe you got speakers, microphones, other gear that you need to hang on to, you need to use, then you need to hook it up to the rest of your AOIP system. Well, the X node is what does that. It converts audio into AOIP and AOIP back into audio, whether it be analog audio, mic level audio, or AES digital audio. Well, let's take a look at the back of this guy. There's the front. It's well designed. It's half a rack width, so you can stack 2 of these side by side in a rack. And you can also power it 2 different ways. Every one has redundant power. You've got commercial power right there, and you've also got PoE power that can power this thing. If you hook it to a switch or put an inline power injector, you can power this another way. And by SNMP, this can report to you. I'm sorry, the switch can report to you whether or not this is drawing power, so you can determine that way if you got a problem with your shore power, your commercial power. Well, this is a mixed signal X node. And it's really useful to stick in places where you might have a couple of different things to get on the network. It's got a mic level input right here, a super high quality mic preamp right there. No processing on it. That's done in an engine in a studio environment. But this will take your mic input. If you don't need a mic input, though, you need a line input. You just plug it into the normal line input jack, and you can set it up to be a line input. You've got a total of 3 stereo line inputs and 3 stereo line outputs. Plus, there's an AES digital input and output on the back of this. There's also, you might need a contact closure coming in or going out. So there's a GPIO node built into this, a couple of GPIO ports. So you've got 5 GPIs, 5 GPOs on each of these 2 ports. So a total in this box of 10 GPIs, 10 GPOs. You could put this at a transmitter site and have yourself some backup remote control. Imagine this. Get an IP radio, like an inexpensive Ubiquity IP radio, or maybe a double radius or other brand of high quality IP radio. Run out to your transmitter site with that, hook it into this with real live wire, and you'll have complete control and reading of the GPIOs as well as audio input and output. Lots of possibilities. This is, again, the X node. This is the mixed signal X node. They're also available all mic inputs, line outputs, all line inputs and outputs, and all AES inputs and outputs. So available several different ways. And from the linear acoustic division of the TELUS Alliance, they've got one that's SDI loop through. In fact, 2 of SDI loop through. So if you need to get television audio in and out of an SDI environment, it's definitely the way to go. Thanks a lot to Axia Audio and the Axia X node for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. I got about 8 of these around my radio stations. Hook up all my satellite receivers to them, legacy receivers. Okay, next, I think we've got Charles Kinney's phone just rang. So he may be busy for a minute or two. We're told he's coming. Okay. Hey, man, how are you?
I had to talk to my Burke remote control.
Let me see if I can get you in here. Oh, guess what? We got to stand back or turn the camera up a little bit, buddy. Oh, gee. There we go. You're going to sit down?
I'll take a stool, and that will be the same height.
Come on in. So this is, we got to get closer. We got a microphone here. There we go. How about that? All right, good deal. So this is your party.
This is my little store here.
It's your party, and you'll cry if you want to.
No crying. There's no crying in AM radio.
So I think one of the first times I met you, maybe 12, 15 years ago, was probably at this transmitter site.
Quite possibly.
Yeah, we came out here and looked at audio processing.
We did. I think we were thinking about playing with some HD radio back then. And we needed a processor for that.
Yeah, okay, all right.
And the processor was great. And
well, okay, so here we are. Now, this site, to me, looks fairly modern, but the site itself is actually pretty old. Tell us about, we're 50,000 watts, 750 kilohertz. You can hear you guys in 36, 38, 40 states? I don't know.
26 reliably.
Reliably. Okay, so tell me about the site that we're at.
So this site was originally built in 1930. It was the 3rd site, actually, for WSB-AM, as they upgraded over the years from 100 watts initially to 500 watts when it was a long wire system above the Biltmore Hotel, which those towers still exist in Atlanta and are actually still lit in red neon at night.
Oh my goodness.
And then there was a 5 kilowatt site on the other side of town, and finally 50 kilowatts here, which was actually on 740 when it went on the air.
Okay.
So the tower is actually a half wave at 740. And in 1941, I believe, there was a frequency shift across the Clear Channel AMs.
Oh.
And so WSB got 750. Fortunately, from a tower standpoint, we moved in the right direction. So
okay.
We now we're 181 degrees instead of 180.
Okay.
Well,
now, that's an interesting number. Tell me what that means for how the station gets out and covers the ground and skywave too.
The skywave is really great with the half-wave tower. It's got a good look angle at that frequency. The ground wave is unfortunately very poor, and I'm embarrassed to say that WSB probably has one of the smallest ground waves for a 50 kilowatt clear of anywhere in the country. Stone Mountain, which is the largest outcropping of granite in the world, is a few miles from here, and everything under here is granite. And granite has shown to be a very poor conductor.
So the ground conductivity in North Georgia is not the best?
The ground conductivity at this site is less than 0.25.
Oh, I think that's bad.
That's quite bad.
What's seawater, like 30 or something, or 15?
Seawater would be 30.
Okay.
At least. Maybe
Okay.
maybe more, depending on how salty it
Okay,
is.
all right. So, okay, good and bad. Now, quick tower height. If your tower was a little taller and it was 5/8 of a wave, I hear that's good for ground wave.
I'm not familiar that ground wave is so related to daytime.
Oh,
so
yeah.
5/8 actually was originally to get more sky wave, to get a better look angle.
Okay,
a
but
better bounce off the atmosphere.
But a shorter, down to about a quarter wave, is good for ground wave too, right?
Quarter wave is good for getting the right efficiency and having a more economical tower.
Okay.
So
there's that
quarter wave
trade-off.
is
There's that
yeah.
trade-off. All right.
And now the FCC is actually pretty much just standardized on quarter wave, so everybody had a fair.
Now, I posted another video, not on GFQ Network. We'll try to get it on GFQ and YouTube. It's on it's on my Facebook feed right now. But it was a quick look at the tower and the big insulators. Tell me about the insulators that hold the tower up.
Those insulators, actually, when they were built by the LAP Corporation, which is still in business and mostly does stuff for power companies for high voltage, and they have been running or been sitting there happily since 1930, which is amazing, given that it's essentially a big piece of glass.
Yeah. What would be a failure mode of an insulator? It crack it, water in it, maybe?
Yeah, that's generally the scenario. It cracks, water gets in. In a worst case scenario, it would fail completely, and although that's pretty rare. Yes.
Yeah. Wow. So, do you have
those
spares?
insulators, we do not have spares.
Oh, okay.
LAP's answer to that when I talked to them about 5 years ago was that they would be happy to build me new ones if I sent the old ones back.
Oh.
So I thought that would be a little bit of a challenge.
Okay.
And those insulators are actually rated for the station to be broadcasting at 500 kilowatts.
If you ever had to take them out to send them back to LAP, you just go to the hardware store and get a 50,000 watt insulated jack.
That's right.
Like a house jack, yeah?
Exactly.
Made out of plastic.
Yep. And I actually, at another site that Cox has, we recently did change out the base insulators on a self-supporter.
Okay.
And I don't ever want to watch that done again.
Okay. All right, so let's look at inside the building here. We've got, we panned around earlier. Let's pan around now. Where do you want to start? Just keep sitting where you are, but we'll pan the camera. You want to start with the on-air transmitter?
The on-air transmitter is a Harris/Gates Air 3DX50. And we've had that on the air now for about 9 or 10 years. And it's all solid state. We've, for the most part, been fairly happy with it.
So it's your main transmitter?
It is the main.
Okay. Does it require regular maintenance, cleaning or anything? I mean, it's all solid state,
Mostly
right?
just changing the filters. And
Yeah.
the site, we're fortunate to have a closed air system in the room here, so dust isn't much of a problem.
I know, I hear it. It blows a lot of air through. All right, let's look at the central rack here. What do you have in there?
Audio processing, and frankly, most of it is just older equipment that we left in because we thought it looked neat from back in the day. At one point, WSB was doing AM stereo, so we have the CQAM gear. We've got ISDN unit for emergency backup.
Yeah.
And from an air standpoint, mod monitor, of course. Then we've got some toroid meters that are looking at toroids for current samples. And then STL.
Oh yeah, that's the Harris.
The Harris
HD
link.
Okay, and then we have one more little rack over here. It looks like it was part of maybe
This
HD.
was the original HD equipment, and while the rack looks nice, especially when it's lit up, we haven't had too much success with that for a while. So.
All right. And then the next we have another transmitter.
And then we've got a regular DX50. Vanna, will you please show off the transmitter? With Rick Benson helping. So that actually went in 1999, complete with output network, meters, and monitoring. So, and it's actually been just a workhorse. And no matter what's going on, if we need that thing to turn on, it'll come on and run and be happy about it.
Wow. Okay. So 2 big solid-state transmitters, and that's not so different than over at WSM in Nashville. Sorry, I moved the camera too far. There we go. I was wondering, how come I'm not in the picture? Where's me? WSM in Nashville, I think, has the same 2 transmitters.
Very similar.
Yeah, and they alternate theirs. All right. So what about the building and the site? When you guys put this here, there wasn't a Fuddruckers and there wasn't a PetSmart over here, was there?
No, when this site was built, it actually was in the middle of nowhere in what's called Tucker, Georgia now, but in 1930 it was a cow pasture.
Okay.
And so the legend has it, the chief engineer at that point in time at WSB was a farmer, and it was close to his farm, so it was convenient for him to go to the site and make it back home. The unfortunate part was he picked an area that probably had the worst ground connectivity in the whole metro area. But it's still a very nice site. But in 1980, the company started looking around as FM took hold and AM started to become less popular. So at that point also, the city had grown out. So they had built a big shopping mall across the street. This land became very valuable. And Cox, being very wise at business, worked a deal with a developer to develop the land into a big shopping center. At that point in time, we got a brand new ground system before it was paved over. So believe it or not, the radials are still there. Every so often they have to do work, and they'll open it up, and there they are. And so,
have you seen any kind of deterioration of the copper radials?
We really haven't.
Wow.
It's really been amazing. So Cox gets the land, and we still broadcast.
And with all that parking lot being over the ground radials, it's kind of hard to steal them.
Yeah, that is definitely one of the
That's a problem for some stations. Wow.
So hopefully none of your viewers have anything to pull up asphalt.
So you're maintaining this site as it is. Do you see any change in the future for a site like this? Or if you did, you couldn't tell me about it?
Well, I really don't. If we were to move the site, first of all, just trying to get zoning, and especially having to deal with neighbors with a 50 kilowatt AM would be disastrous.
Yeah.
And we really wouldn't get much of an advantage. If we were on the other side of town, the ground connectivity would go from 0.25 to 0.75, which is really not much of an improvement.
Okay. Now, it's interesting that in so many places, people complain about a radio station neighbor. Now, you guys were definitely here first. And when the developer purchased the property from you, from Cox, they
didn't purchase it. It's only a lease.
It's leased.
We own the property.
But they went in wise. I'm sure engineers were involved, eyes wide open. Here's what you can expect problem-wise over the years: radio station and your telephones.
The lease is actually pretty fantastic in that it's very specific what any tenant moving in has to do. And unlike most building where you put conduit together, put a little screw on it and call it a day, everything here is soldered. It's all bonded back to the main ground system. Studs are all bonded. It's really one heck of a process to go through.
So if I wanted to move into one of the buildings around here, I'd have to and remodel it. Mm-hmm. I got to follow the lease that
you have to follow the lease, and then you have to allow either me or one of my guys to come inspect it.
Wow.
So it's not enough to get your DeKalb County electrical inspection.
But they probably don't have much problem with their telephones and other things, do they?
They don't. Now, that being said, once you exit the land that we own, then it's kind of a free-for-all. There's a lot of great stories related to that, including people calling, demanding that I suddenly turn off the AM, to which my response is, where were you in 1930? But the best story that actually made the Atlanta Journal, which is the local, obviously Cox-owned newspaper, a OBGYN moved in down the street and built a very new modern office. And the first day he was open, there was a nice lady, and she was in with the ultrasound tech, and the ultrasound tech was rubbing her belly, and she said, "Would you like to hear the baby's heartbeat?" I said, "Oh, that'd be wonderful." And out of the speaker came WSB talk show host Neil Bortz. And the next day on the front page of the business section in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution was, "It's a boy, it's a girl, it's a Bortz."
Oh, God.
So we've definitely got some interesting calls about this site.
I don't know how we can improve on that story. That's fantastic. How about you're in a 50 kilowatt AM site? The tower is just right outside that wall right there.
It is.
What kind of problems do you yourself have engineering in this place?
Well, this entire building was originally designed by the chief engineer at the time named Ron Wilson, who'd been a long time chief engineer at WSB. And this entire building is a Faraday cage.
Okay.
So, and there's actually places where pass-throughs were put in the concrete, and you can see the copper screens. So.
Really? Okay. And we got a door open right now, so that kind of blows the Faraday cage out.
That does kind of blow that out of the water.
What's amazing, though, look, my USB stick here is working. The little modem's working. This, all this stuff is. Even these little speakers are working, which really surprised me. So, wow. Charles, anything else?
Listen to 750.
Okay. I do. It comes in at night in Nashville, no problem.
Absolutely.
No problem. Man, good to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Take care. It's Charles Kinney. He is the Director of Engineering for radio here in Atlanta for Cox Radio, Cox Media. And he, in association, well, at the same time as the NAB Radio Show, he thought it'd be a great idea to invite a lot of engineers out here. So we all had barbecue and macaroni and cheese and some kind of... An RF, yes. What's the volts per meter around here? Well, inside it's not bad, but outside it's 10 volts per meter, more 50 volts a meter. Yeah, 100. So you being tall, you got more across you than most folks. But
well, if I start to get near wavelength of 750, I got a major problem.
That's right. All right. Sorry if you couldn't hear. Charles said if he gets near a wavelength of 750, then he's got other problems. Yeah. Hey, our show, This Week in Radio Tech, is being brought to you in part by the folks at Zipstream. That's a new mark of the Telos Alliance. Zipstream is a line of streaming processors and encoders, kind of like your new transmitter. For a long time, a lot of us, me included, took streaming on the internet as kind of a hobby. Not many listeners out there, not many folks really realizing that they could be tuned in that way. And now streaming is pretty important. There are close to 140 million people listening to a stream at least one time in a month. So that's almost half the population of the U.S. listening to a stream once a month. That way, that's a U.S. number for 2015. And so it just grows and grows. More and more people have been using their cell phones to do streaming in their cars. Yeah, of course, eventually we'll have cars that have, streaming dashboards. They'll have connected dashboards. So what do you want to do as a broadcaster or as some other content creator? Maybe you run an internet radio station. Well, you want that not only to sound good, of course, you want to sound good. You want your listeners to be able to listen to it easily, have it sound good for them, if you are sending metadata with graphics, with your title and artist, with your call letters or your slogan, you want that all to happen with ease. Not only ease for you, but of course, ease for the people who are listening. Well, Telos has a whole new line of products, some of them new, some of them have been around a little while, called Zipstream. There's the Zipstream R1. That's a one rack unit box that'll take one audio coming in and turn it into a couple of different streams. There's the new Zipstream R2, which was just introduced at the IBC show in Amsterdam about a month ago. And the Zipstream R2 will do 8 audio inputs and turn that into plenty of streams, multiple, 40, 50 different types of streams, different bit rates, different algorithms, if you like, sending to different geographical locations to wherever your content distribution network or your CDN is. And of course, they are, do all kinds of metadata, make it easy to get metadata from your automation system onto your streams. And then there's other products too. There's software-only products like the Zipstream X1 and the Zipstream X2. I'm using Zipstream 9X2. That's got the Omnia 9 processing option built into it at some of my radio stations, and using ordinary Zipstream X2 at my other stations. Something cool about all the new streaming products from Zipstream is that they're capable of doing adaptive rate streaming. That's where you're actually producing several streams, same audio, and the same, the blocks are aligned, and but they produce them in several different bit rates. So, for example, there's Apple HLS streaming now. There's Microsoft Smooth streaming, and there's a standard called MPEG-, dynamic adaptive streaming. And so there's all these things that are important. It's like features in a transmitter. Consider your streaming, processing, and encoding like your transmitter, and you'll see how important it is to the success of your business, your stream, your radio station, or if you're a content creator that you don't have a regular over-the-air transmitter, but you depend on over-the-web streaming. You need to check these products out. Go to telosalliance.com, telosalliance.com, and look for our streaming, processing, and encoding products. Check them out there. There's also PCIe cards that do processing and streaming as well. Check those out. Those are from our partner Sound 4, and they're now part of the Zipstream family. And thanks to Telos Alliance and Zipstream for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. Hey, Chris Tobin, are you still with us?
Certainly.
What do you think about this WSB transmitter site?
It's excellent. I love it. Nothing like a Faraday cage for a transmitter site.
Of course, you've been responsible for probably a number of 50 kilowatt AM sites.
Yes. And when we got those calls from the neighbors when they put in a new phone system or a new phone in their home or office, when they would call me and complain and say that they can hear the music, or in my case, one station was talk, on their phone, I said to them, well, you should be grateful. We normally charge you for music on hold. And on several of those calls, I never heard back from anyone. But I have to give credit to Doc Masumi, and he's the one who told me that. He was the engineer at WQXR AM and FM in New York City. And he used to, and their AM station was smack in the middle of Queens, Maspeth, Queens. So they were surrounded by residents, and he'd get calls on a regular basis, and he would just tell them, well, we normally charge for music on hold, so just tell me where to send the invoice, and I'll be more than happy to help you out. They would hang up on him, or they would just be silent and say, well, that's okay, thank you. And he was trying to kid with them, and, well, they just never called back. So I've been using it ever since. So it works out nice. But yes, AM sites are tough. They're a challenge, both the community around as well as inside the transmitter room itself.
One of the things I like about AM sites is that they tend to force an engineer to use a lot of different engineering talents, a lot of physical, chemical talents, interpersonal relationships like with neighbors talents, as well as good RF engineering, more so than if your FM antenna is 1,000 feet up in the air.
Oh, absolutely. And also, you have the best situations are when you have the cable company calling you up and telling you that they're complaining you're interfering with them, and you go to them. Well, how about we go to the distribution amp on the pole halfway down the block that has 3 stubs hanging off it, and maybe, just maybe, if you decide to terminate them, we could get rid of your problem. I've had that happen too.
Yep. I hear you. Well, hey, let's move on. We've got Charlie Wooten with us. Hey, Charlie.
How you doing, Kurt?
How you doing? I addressed you by your call sign, and I forgot it. What is it?
NF4A.
NF4A. Okay, can you hear Charlie okay? Do I need to move the mic a little bit? All right. There we go. Try to get the mic out of the sight line anyway. Glad you're here.
Glad to be here. First time I've seen WSB, even though I've lived in the South all my life. It's the first time I've been to this site.
So you've lived places, besides Panama City?
Actually, the only places I've ever lived are Panama City, Florida, and Washington, D.C.
But it's not too far from Atlanta.
No, it's not far from Atlanta.
And it's kind of like going to New York City for a Southern.
New York City, yeah.
Well, you've been on the show before talking about mostly about ham radio, but also about broadcast. And I see you doing a lot of posting on Facebook about your various challenges and opportunities with transmitter sites.
Right. I do. In addition to working for iHeart, formerly Clear Channel, I do a couple of little mom and pops on the side, and ran into an interesting problem the other day. I was going to put in a new 3CX 10,000 or 15,000 for a Family Life radio.
An FM transmitter?
And an FM transmitter.
Okay. A tube. Okay.
A tube. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I figured anybody that's listening to TWiRT would know what a 3CX.
For some reason, I was thinking that was a model of CCA transmitter.
No.
It's a tube.
But it was in a CCA transmitter.
That's why, because it's a triangle.
Grounded grid. Yeah.
Grounded grid transmitter.
Well,
okay.
They sent the tube, and from the rebuilder, and took the old one out, tried to put it into the blocker. It wouldn't fit.
Oh.
And I got to looking, and where they had rebuilt the tube, they had made it about probably no more than a 30-second too big.
Oh.
And that blocker wouldn't have anything to do with it.
Wouldn't fit on there.
So I had to put the old tube back in, get them to send me another tube.
Now, would
the
blocker have fit if you took out the insulation?
Oh, it would have fit wonderfully, but it wouldn't have been a blocker then. It would have been a dead short.
Darn.
Yeah,
okay.
Damn it. But anyhow, you run into things. I told my wife Jennifer, I'll be back in an hour, because I knew how long it would take to change the tube.
Everything goes well, it doesn't take long at all.
So about 2.5 hours I get back grumbling, but you run into that's what makes it interesting. Things that you think are going to be simple, you know what's wrong. You're going to go out there, you're going to put this, and fix it, come back home.
Yeah.
And it never works out, or it doesn't work out every time. It works out sometime, but not very often.
So to finish that story, I guess you had to put the old tube back in.
Had to put the old tube back in.
Yeah.
Send the other one back. They had to send me another one, put it in, and it fit perfectly, and everything was fine. But I mean, you could actually feel a ridge around the edge. Well, I think you might have seen my post. But there was actually a ridge around the tube.
How would you guess that happened? Why was that tube so far out of mechanical tolerance?
Well, sometimes they build tubes to go in other things that don't necessarily have a blocker around them, or they may just attach to the plate cap. So they may not have paid that as much attention to that tolerance as they should have. But I know I've run into that problem before with the 3CX 3000 with a certain brand of transmitter, and they always want to make sure you tell them it's for this transmitter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Because they'll take a mic and check it, make sure it's the correct dimension.
Yeah.
But I've been enjoying doing some mom and pop work on the side here the last couple of months. I put in a new Gates Air transmitter. It's the most plug-and-play transmitter I've ever.
Tell me about that. Was it FM?
FM,
Okay.
What we call a FAX 10.
Okay.
10 kilowatts, and you can move it around like a refrigerator.
Huh.
I mean, of course, you didn't have it hooked up to anything. You didn't have the modules in it or the power supplies in it.
Right.
But you could put it exactly where you wanted it. We had taken out an older Continental transmitter, which we had to have 5 people. We had to put it on 1.25-inch water pipe to roll it around and move it, muscle it
that
around.
heavy.
They're 1,967 pounds.
Oh.
So when we put this FAX 10 in, we just brought it over, set it in, plumbed it in, hooked the electrical up, plugged in the modules, boom, on the air, no problem.
Now, does a PAX 10 have an IP connection to it?
Yes, it does.
So you can browse into it, or
it's got a browser for the exciter and for the controller for the power amplifier. I've got a computer there. This is the first time I've really ever been able to do this at a transmitter site. I've got a computer. I've got a switch. I've got the STL receiver. It's a Gates Air HD link.
Yeah.
Got it going to the switch. I have the processor, the 8600 Optima going to the switch. I've got the transmitter going to the switch. I've got all these things going to the switch, and I can just hit an icon on the desktop shortcut and go to that device and look at it.
Sure.
It's really cool. Plus, we bought the Burke, I forget what they call it, but it's an interface with the FAX transmitter where you just plug in you plug this box that Burke furnishes into the network, and all of your meter readings magically show up, and they're calibrated and they're labeled already. And so when you go to look at it tells you all of the things you need to know. It's really was neat to be able to do that. It's the first time I've been able to really use IP at a transmitter site like that.
Yeah. And how did you get internet connectivity to this transmitter site?
Telco.
Okay.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's the DSL line, but it's good enough.
I've been raving lately, and I know I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I know other people have done this, but I installed a couple Ubiquity radios.
Right.
The little bitty one, the little baby's first microwave.
Yeah, right.
And now I've got internet connectivity, and I'm not only do I have remote control my Nautel transmitter out there, but I'm running LiveWire over it, so my audio goes over that way perfectly linearly, and it's just amazing. I'm still wrapping my head around the convenience of doing this.
Well, I had some limited IP at one of my iHeart transmitter sites, but not to the extent that I've been able to do with this little station of all places, South Alabama. Very sophisticated setup for a little South Alabama radio station.
But you can maintain it more easily this
way,
right?
Absolutely.
Cool.
And there's a PC there on site, and if there's a problem or if I'm going out there to work, I'm more likely not to walk up to the equipment, but there's a desk with a computer. I'm more likely to pull up a chair and go to the computer rather than look at the transmitter or to the STL or whatever device I'm wondering about.
I was just thinking that a few years ago, if I asked you for an engineering tip of the day or something, you might talk about filament voltage management,
Right.
stuff like that, and actually with that 3CX 15,000, it's still a good topic.
Very important.
But what about with modern transmitters? Do you have a tip that you've found for taking care of these modern solid state transmitters?
That they are so cotton picking reliable.
Yeah.
The only thing I can tell you to do is to keep the air filters clean.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm serious.
Yeah.
You might want to check where the AC comes in, make sure those power connections are tight. Check them every 6 or 8 months, but the air filters, that's all you really need to worry about.
If you're out at a remote site with no conveniences around, how can you clean an air filter? You bring a vacuum with you, or
What I
take new
do,
ones out?
I have two sets of air filters.
Okay.
So if they're the reusable filters, I'll put a set in, take them in to where I have air or water or whatever I need to clean them with,
Yeah.
and then I've got them for the next time.
Cool.
But most of the transmitters you can get one-time filters. You can buy them and get them, or you can get a sheet metal shop to make you a bracket where you can slide them in. I've done that on a couple of transmitters too.
So in leaving, when's the time you're going to be occupying your hunt club again?
That starts Thanksgiving morning. Actually, the first big meal, which is what you're probably thinking
Sure,
about,
that's what you. Yeah.
is the Wednesday night before Thanksgiving
Okay,
morning.
okay.
Yeah,
Good deal.
we'll put on a big feed for that one.
Charlie, thank you so
All
much
right.
for being with us.
Good to be
Really
here.
appreciate it. Thanks for
Enjoyed
bringing
it.
your lovely wife too.
All right, thank you.
All righty. Hey, you're watching This Week in Radio Tech. What time is it? Oh, we got about another 15, 20 minutes to go. And who we got next, Jeff? All right, come on over, Jeff. You want to stand or sit? It's up to you.
I don't know.
I don't know.
You tell me what to do.
How about we stand?
Okay.
There we go.
I have
And
to reposition.
no, yeah, you're a little tall side there. Hey, I was in the middle of saying you're watching This Week in Radio Tech. It's our weekly podcast. This is episode 276, I think, of This Week in Radio Tech. We've been doing this a while. Chris Tobin is with us. He's in studio, and I'll bet you Chris Tobin will end up having a question or two for you
All right.
because he's big market guy. He's market number one. Yeah. So
You're the guy.
he is.
Hey, Chris.
Hey there.
Hey, we can hear you. Good.
Oh, good.
deal.
Yeah. Well, I was just playing the little machine that's got the Voltaire guy with the hat. Oh, that's a different place. Sorry.
So Jeff, this Jeff Stedman, he is in charge of the 25/7 division, and inventor of many things,
Well,
but
I had a
coordinator.
lot of help.
You had a lot of help. Yeah. Well, you're right. I like this Voltaire shirt.
It's brandy new.
We
Just,
work for the same company. How do I get one of those?
You talk to Jim Armstrong, and we grab one for you and Eddie out of the back.
Aha.
Good
All
luck
right.
talking to Jim Armstrong.
All right. So, Jeff, today at the NAB show, I guess the big news was you gave a talk about some new features coming out in Voltaire. You also reminded folks of what the Voltaire does.
Right.
And you also made an interesting statement about, hey, whether or not you have a Voltaire, your audio processing has an effect on watermarking, which is, in this country, known as PPM.
Mm-hmm.
Right after you came on, or a half hour later, some folks from Nielsen came on to talk about some improvements that they have planned for their technology. I just opened a big barn door here to talk about what can you tell us about the events of today?
Well, let's see. First, I would say that, yes, to your first point, it's absolutely true that regular processing has a huge effect on encoding and encoding quality. And what we were stressing today, and this is on the back end of our launch of Voltaire 2.0 last week, which is really all about monitoring and analytics. Some of the things that we've learned from our new visibility into the whole watermarking system is what can we do to help us optimize processing and placement within the processing chain to really make the encoders kick. So really, since they rolled out, you had a red light and you have a green light. And what I will say is it's insufficient for what you're attempting to measure. It's a pass-fail. It's either on or it failed 3 minutes ago. And in the highly competitive world we live in, it's not enough. And what we introduced and we talked about was really that it's more of a quality of service issue. It is that we want to have a grade. I mean, you think about a pass-fail grade. There's a lot between a D- and an A+.
Yeah.
And we all strive for A+. We all strive for as good as we can get, or at least we ought to. The competitive people do. And really, Voltaire is a tool, and especially the monitoring, with the insight it provides, it's a tool to help you navigate this whole area where once you were told, oh, you don't need to know anything, it's irrelevant, but it is relevant. And we know that, and a lot of astute broadcasters have proven it to themselves.
I'm just reminded I should have prefaced this a bit more, because probably the majority of our audience are not in markets where they have PPM measurement. They still do diary measurement,
Yep.
or they're in other countries where they either do no measurement or some other kind, telephone call out and so forth. So what we're talking about here is technology where watermarking is done with the transmitted audio from AM, FM radio stations, and also internet streams, and then panelists, a certain number of people in each market are sent a little pager-like device that has a microphone. It listens to whatever that the person is exposed to. And when it hears those watermarks, which it can hear, but people generally cannot hear because of the way they're hidden in the audio, it records that person was exposed to, this radio station or that radio station or this internet stream or that internet stream. And all that theoretically can work okay. The problem comes about when some of the audio content that some radio stations and other broadcasters choose to play, maybe it's a quiet symphony or some staccato talk or some talk that's got a lot of quiet. Maybe it's the Charlie Rose show
or dead air.
Or dead air. There's no place for the watermarking to occur. There's no place to put these secret tones in the audio. So therefore, credit cannot be given to the broadcaster for somebody listening. So the idea here is to improve the opportunities for those watermarking notes, but also with the technology that broadcasters have been sold, I was going to say given, but really sold so far, all we've had, as you referred to, is a pass-fail.
Right.
And if you've got a kid in school and you get a report card that says, pass or fail for a few things, you got to know that there is a big possibility in the child's outcome in real life compared to pass-fail. The child may be so close to failing all the time, and yet he's passing all the time, that it's not good enough for the parent just to know pass-fail. So it's not good enough for the engineer or the program director to just know pass-fail on my PPM data. They got to have some qualitative. How good
they
is it?
want to know, and they want to have this visibility. I mean, we're broadcasters. We measure everything. We've got monitors on everything, and increasingly broadcast, at least in the top markets, is very, very data driven. And this is another spigot. This is another place where data matters. And here's a fresh visibility into something that we've been living with. And it really is, I think, the customer's right to know how the system is working. And I mean, that's really the sort of the 10,000-foot view. It's an enabling technology. It is about visibility, and that's what where we kind of started this thing. And sometimes I cast this in terms of, at least within our Telos family, the Telos 10, the Zephyr, our audio over IP with Axia, that these were all very new, very big leaps in terms of new tech, and sometimes new tech is disruptive, and sometimes it has to make a splash in the market, and the waves ripple through the pond, and then we shake things out and we try to make it better. But it's an issue of continuous improvement, and this is a place where the sun hasn't shined, and we opened the windows a bit, and we took a big risk to do it, and we've gotten a lot of applause from our end users saying, well, attaboy, good on you. I will tell you, we took a big risk to build this unit. We did a deep dive in the tech. We did it very, very quietly for many years, and we didn't really know what we were going to get on the other side. And the first field test of it, the goal was to prove that we were doing no harm. That was the first thing out. And then to see, well, now we've proven we're doing no harm. Now, can we improve things? Can we can we help things? And it's been a rocket ride for us. I mean, we're up to 800 units out there in about a calendar year, and
That's
we're
like 2 a day, more than 2 a day going in. Wow.
It's been enormous, and now circling back to where this intersects with regular audio processing, we're now working with our colleagues within Omnia, and that is to what can we learn from Voltaire to inform the processing side. And so we're working on some new processing presets and some new software updates for our flagship processors on the 9 and the 11 to be, as we're saying, Voltaire aware is going to be our buzzword for the presets. But we're learning a lot. We've learned a lot, and we're going to keep investigating. And now we built this tool that's going to help us learn other things.
Now, I've got a follow-up question about what Nielsen said today and about the proposal that Voltaire could be monitoring only. I want to ask Chris Tobin. Chris, have you got any questions at this point for Jeff?
No, Jeff has said it all. I just like the Voltaire aware, though. That's a nice one. I think more people should be involved in the PPM discussion. I think Jeff's spot on with the deep dive and what you guys have been discovering and talking and making people aware. And you're right. Data is all about what we do in the business and metrics and measuring, and I think more of it needs to be done.
Yeah, I mean, what's fair to say is if it didn't have an effect, no one would have bought it. I mean, it's as simple as that. We put this into the hands of skeptics. Some very highly placed skeptical people that said, "There's no way this isn't going to," and then 3 weeks later. Let's continue the conversation. So we're going to continue to push the envelope. We are now working on a layer 2 compatible. Actually, we finished that. We haven't released it yet, than to a couple testers, and we are working on an analyze only version of Voltaire. And this is for our friends to the north.
Can you speak a bit more about what you said, layer 2? That was the subject of Nielsen's talk today about an enhanced coding that they're coming out with.
PPM has 3 layers. Only 2 are really utilized that we know. Layer 2 has not been really anything really done with it. And what it is the way that the system works is there are 10 frequencies on 12 channels. Or do I have it as 12 now? And layer 1 and layer 2 are 2 different groups of these frequencies. So they're sort of mirror images of each other, but they're at different center frequencies. And so originally they were using, I think that the original idea was to use layer 1 for radio, layer 2 for TV, or layer 1 for local and layer 2 for network, but was the way to have multiple tones coexist on the same.
Oh, so you could see who your local affiliate was and who the network originator was.
Right, so they could interleave.
Yeah.
And that the single meter could pick them all up.
Yeah.
And what we started with, because it was a predominant in the U.S., was layer 1. We've got layer 2 done. We're now working on an analyze-only mode for Voltaire, just for the monitoring functions, because that has value. And that was really something we actually had a bunch of requests for, especially north of the border.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool.
So,
any other things to say about it?
I don't know. I'm just I'm happy to have my barbecue here at WSB, and it's quite a transmitter site. Who would have thought in the middle of a shopping mall you'd have a tower like this with the big 18-foot walls? It's like a castle.
It is. You've got what are your 50 kilowatt stations in your neck of the woods, the Boston area?
Well, BZ.
WBZ.
And BZ. Did I say BZ? Did I mention them? Let's see who else for AMs. I think RKO. EEI. I think.
Okay.
Well, some of the big legacies. The legacy
Everyone's
guys.
heard of WBZ though.
Yeah, they're and never I mean, listener, drive by them every day.
Well, is there a site in the middle of a shopping mall like this one?
No. They've got a link out to, there's a whole antenna farm out on 128, and I think they're out there. Actually, maybe they're not. I don't know. You have to ask Scott Fybush. He can tell you chapter and verse, and I'm afraid.
But it is worth pointing out. We tend to talk about watermarking on FM stations, but it's on AM stations too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because the tones that are used are easily reproduciable by.
Well, they're in the 1 to 3 kilohertz range.
Yeah, if you don't have that on the air, you're not a radio station. Good deal. Thanks very much. Appreciate it very much, Jeff.
Chris, great to see you, man.
Be
Jeff
well.
Stedman.
Good to see you. Enjoy the show.
I'm going to come get my T-shirt shortly. Hey, Eddie, who's next, if anybody? All right. Hey, we are live at the WSB transmitter site in Atlanta, Georgia. And, here's a good Southern boy. How you doing?
I am fine. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. Chris Tobin, I don't know if you know this gentleman. If you don't, you should.
Yep,
John's George.
Oh, I know the name.
now
I
with
know the
Armed
name.
Specialties. So
Yes.
Chris Tobin's my co-host.
Yes, I know.
And he might pepper you with questions from the Northeast.
Oh gosh, I'm in trouble then.
You've been in radio a while, haven't you?
I have been. Actually, I started in radio in this market in 1968 at a station called WKXI FM, which
Kixie.
Yeah, which
Okay.
later became Quixie FM, which Star.
QXI?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So.
Well, I want to give a quick introduction to John. Now, I've always known John as a sales rep for one company or another, right? And what that, but you started in radio.
I started
you were
in
on
radio,
the air?
on the air for a while.
Did engineering?
Did engineering,
Okay.
sales, and even ownership.
So this is what I have to say about John is that because he's done so many things, he's like a lot of us. Chris, you've been on the air. Andrew Zarian running the show right now. He's been on the air on his own network for so long, and so you come from this background of actually knowing what you're talking about. And
I try.
And what people like about you, John, is your easygoing style.
Well, thank you. I
People
appreciate
enjoy talking to you. So that's why I invited you to come talk to us for
Well,
a minute.
Thank you.
So with RF specialties, I think one of the things that's interesting to talk about is what are people interested in nowadays? What's hot? What are people
Well, I think
asking about?
the two hot items that we deal with on a day-to-day basis, of course, are translators,
Oh.
and that's the new intro into FM broadcasting. I mean, every market has a number of translators that are providing new signals and new sources of programming for those stations, and at the same time, LP/FM is big, and then of course, audio over IP. We were just talking about that a few minutes ago with Jim, and people are still not grasping this move from ISDN into IP, and I mean that's the way to go. It's those are the hot items these days.
Now, one thing that I didn't hear you talk about was traditional broadcasters, people who've had a full power license for a while. What about them doing upgrades? Are you not seeing much of that action?
We're seeing some of that. A lot of those broadcasters will do an upgrade when they add a translator, for example. We just had a small market AM who added a translator who completely rebuilt their studios, added all new, I'll throw a plug in, Axia equipment and new audio processing, but it gave the AM station a brand new life, not only having the FM there for the translator, but it brought new equipment and it really, the community really got excited about what was going on because it wasn't a rundown radio station anymore.
Cool. Do you find are a lot of your customers smaller broadcasters in rural areas?
We deal with all sizes,
Yeah.
but we're seeing a lot of the large groups work directly with the manufacturers. So we deal a lot with middle-sized markets and small market broadcasters.
Now, today I talked about streaming in my presentation at NAB. What do you hear from smaller broadcasters asking about streaming, if anything?
Well, I think every market, if they're not streaming now, they will be streaming shortly. And in conjunction with the streaming, a lot of the really smarter broadcasters are taking their web pages and tying the stream in with the web page, driving people from their web page to their stream and back and forth. So that if they're listening to a stream, there'll be, of course, the stream will be off air in a lot of cases, or it may be an independent broadcaster or a streamer, but they work it back and forth between their web page and their stream, and that way it makes it a lot more alive for the person who's listening. They can see, almost touch and feel.
Gotcha. Some small broadcasters in small towns have the problem of too many high schools playing football on Friday night.
Streaming is the success.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You've got one radio station or maybe two, but you've got as many streams as you want to make.
We have a friend of mine in northeastern South Carolina, up in a little town called Sherrall, bought an AM. She added a translator. She then bought a local started her own local newspaper. Now she's driving people to her stream or translator or local newspaper using 2 streams so that she can do both area high school football teams on Friday night. And of course, ties all this in together and co-promotes everything. I mean, it's great for the small broadcaster.
Wow. And I remember back in the day when WEKY in Richmond, Kentucky put AM stereo on the air, and the owner, Mr. Bill Walters, who I have a great deal of respect for, Bill said, can we put the Madison Central game on the left channel and the Madison High School game on the right channel? I said, Bill, that'll work for some people with AM stereo radios, but everybody else will hear 2 ball games at the same time.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. We're here at WSB's historic transmitter site in the late 50s when stereo was really being played around with a lot. Back in my hometown of Columbia, South Carolina, they experimented with stereo. And they didn't know quite how to deal with it, so they talked people in to getting 2 radios. The station had an FM station and an AM station, and they did right channel only AM and left channel, and you could put the radios side by side, and you had stereo.
Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness!
They only did that as a short experiment. So.
And back in the analog days, the delay was about the same on either
exactly
one.
Right.
So digital's messed that up for us. John, thank you so much.
It was a pleasure.
If folks want to get in touch with RF Specialties and you, where would they go?
Well, you can go to our website, which is rfspecialties.com or rfspec.com.
Okay.
And they actually have contacts to all our different offices there, so you can get our email addresses, our telephone numbers, and give us a call.
And besides RF stuff, you have studio stuff too.
Oh, yeah, studio and RF.
Okay,
Everything from the microphone to the transmitting antenna.
Just like this podcast.
Exactly.
Right. Thanks a lot, John.
Thank you.
Take care. Hey, you're watching This Week in Radio Tech. It's Kirk Harnack here at the WSB transmitter site, along with Chris Tobin back in studio. Chris, have you got a tip for you could come up with us right after our commercial break?
Actually, I think I do.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. Hey, maybe we can get one more guest over here. Come on over here, Mr. Mondi. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
And bring your lovely daughter with you.
Yes, Zipporah, yeah.
Pronounce your name again. Zipporah.
It means a small bird.
I need to move the camera here real quick. Get everybody in here. There we go. All right. I think we're good. I think we got it. All right. Here, I'll squeeze in here. Everybody squeeze in close.
All right.
Come on here, Zipporah. All right. So I want to introduce you to a friend of mine, Elijah Mundy. I was doing engineering for you when your poor little broken down radio station had a problem.
Sure was.
You were in West Helena, Arkansas,
Yeah,
where you still live.
In Helena, Arkansas.
Helena, Arkansas,
Right.
okay. And I couldn't tell the difference in those two towns.
Right.
And you had a little gospel station on
Right.
FM, right?
Right.
Yeah. And that poor little transmitter had been through so many engineers who abused it so
Right.
badly.
Right.
And it would go off the air, and you'd call me from Memphis to come down there and fix it.
Right. Sure did. And we had an AM transmitter too that was so old it was older than dirt.
I don't remember working on that one. I thought maybe you were too embarrassed to ask me to work on that one. But I would fix your transmitter, and it would run good for another a few months or something,
Right.
and something else would go wrong. Some
Right.
mice would get into it, or
Right.
who knows
You'd come
what.
back and run the snakes out and everything.
Yeah, there you go. And Zipporah,
Yes.
when I met you, you must have been a baby.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
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 She was a baby.
Do you remember the day that I took your dad for an airplane ride
Right.
over the radio station?
No.
No.
No, we don't want you to be talking about that.
You
because-
know, you
Oh, he's my-
fly?
Yeah.
No,
You know
see
I
that?
want to fly.
You know what? No, I don't want you to be
Do you
bringing that
teach?
up.
Why?
Because see, because I know you flew me around. You used to fly down there, but she wants to fly, and I don't want her to learn how to fly.
Oh, well,
Because she get up there, I want her to learn how to drive first.
listen, it's safer than driving a motorcycle when you're drunk. It absolutely is.
Say,
Absolutely.
Dad, it's safer than driving a motorcycle when you're
Right.
drunk.
But I remember those great days. Matter of fact, I remember one time we was having a problem with the IPA.
The
And
intermediate power amplifier
right,
on the
and,
transmitter, little tube.
And there was a little. And this has told me that you are a great engineer. You were standing there. You said, "We got a problem here.
Yeah.
If there's a high visual on this IPA, you're gonna have to drive all the way from out from the studio out here to come out just to push this button to reset it.
Okay.
And
Is that
so
what I said?
and that's what you said.
Okay.
And I think it was a little while later when we had finally got that wired into the remote.
Oh, okay.
But we got it wired in. I said, boy, Kirk, matter of fact, you're the one that wired it in.
Okay, if you say
and
so.
Sure enough, that happened. And I never have to, because I would have to go out there and hit that button, and you predicted that was going to happen, and then you put the equipment in to make sure that I could do it from the studio.
You could sit in the comfort of your studio and push a
hit
button.
the button. I wanted to drive out there and do
You wouldn't have to go to
it.
that nasty bean
I
field.
said, boy, that Hernick is something else. He is great.
Good deal.
Great engineer, and you're just awesome.
Well, thank you.
And not only that, you're talented. You're a comedian. You're a weatherman. You're an engineer. You're a cook.
You're too kind. You're too kind. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
I'll have that check in the mail for you right away. I appreciate that.
Okay.
All right, guys. You guys take care. Is it
All
Cora, good to see you? Good deal. All right. Take care. Bye.
Take care of yourself.
Bye.
All right.
So Elijah got a big FM radio station in Greenville, Mississippi, and he ran it for a few years, made it into a successful operation, and then myself and my partner Larry Fuss bought it from him, and so that's one of our stations now in Greenville. So anyway, it's been good to know Elijah for a long, long time. We got to go unless there's somebody else I got to put in. Okay. Hey, I want to tell you about our last sponsor, and that is the folks at Lavo and the Lavo Crystal Clear IP audio console. Now, it's IP, but it also does traditional inputs and outputs as well. You know, the folks at Lavo are famous for making great big audio consoles. So they have decades of experience in making German-engineered, fantastic, high-quality, well-built radio, television, and installed sound consoles. Well, now they have a line called the Crystal line of audio consoles, and the Crystal Clear is a natural outgrowth of that. So what you do with the Crystal Clear is you get a rack mount box. It's one rack unit in size. It's available with dual power supplies if you want to do that, so you have more reliable power for it. And it has all the audio inputs and outputs right on the back of it. Mic inputs, line level inputs and outputs, also AES inputs and outputs. And if you want to delve into audio over IP, it's got Ravenna, which includes AES 67 compatibility, all on right in this Ravenna Crystal unit that goes in the rack. It's also got all the mixing functions, all the mixing engine, the DSP functions, and audio processing is built in. So you can make you can make your main mix, sub mixes, program 1, 2, 3. You can make automatic mix minuses to go, or back feeds to go to people's headphones, or mix minus to go to a hybrid or a codec. It's all built in. Now, what about controlling it? Well, there's two ways to control it. One is with a traditional console surface that they make, but the other way is with the Crystal Clear surface. And this is a 10-touch, multi-touch computer touchscreen. And it's running an application which looks amazingly like an audio console. And it has well-designed buttons and faders. They're designed to be touched. So it's not, a picture of a console pasted onto an app that you got to try to use your fingers on. It's designed from the ground up to be a touch surface. And because it's in software, it can be all context sensitive. So when you create a mix minus, when you run a fader up and down or push an options button, it does what you need it to do for that kind of source, going into that audio bus and producing a mix minus of the right kind when you need it. Because all this stuff it knows where the destinations are, so it's easy to use. A lot of features involved, of course, the beautiful time of day clock on it that's kept to standards with an atomic clock over the internet. You've got program 1 and 2, as I mentioned. As I said, mic inputs, line outputs, all the things you need to do to make a station. The console has 8 faders on screen at any one time, and that can be easily changed to other sources. Push a button and change a scene. You can memorize a scene easily. And hey, you know what? If you mess up and drop something on the multi-touch surface and mess it up, or mess up what's selected, no problem. You can reload that profile with one easy button push. You ought to check this out. The technology is exciting. The operating paradigm is very cool and interesting. Jocks love this. It's a touchscreen. I mean, it's like their iPad that they're running the console on. Check it out on the web at Lavo, L-A-W-O, that's spelled L-A-W-O.com, and look for radio products and look for the Crystal Clear audio console, audio over IP console from Lavo. And thanks to Lavo for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. All right, Chris, I'm due for a beverage right now.
So am I.
give me your engineering tip of the week. What is
I have
your mind?
Two
week?
tips. The first one is I was just at a transmitter site the other day, and there was some issues with the transmitter. This is a backup site. An issue with the transmitter and Viswire and some other issues, and the guy's like, well, something doesn't make any sense. I'm like, all right, let's take a look at what you have. So if you picture two transmitters and two antenna switches, a dummy load, and then off to the tower the antenna cables go. It turns out two things. One, the antenna switch, for whatever reason, one of the two, you have to manually switch between transmitter 1 and transmitter 2 to get to the antenna. And then that was a bad thing. So the switch wasn't all the way in the proper position. Needless to say, the RF was sort of making it across the contacts. So the other thing was the dummy load. So the tip is check your RF switches. Doesn't matter what time of year it is. Manually cycle them. Go back and forth and make sure they're properly working. Second, if you have a high-powered dummy load which has built-in fans, I suggest you put a pair of goggles, turn on the fan, and blow out the dust. Because when we turned on the dummy load this week, the room filled up with dust particles to the point where we couldn't breathe. We had to leave.
Oh.
So I was like, when was the last time you ran this thing? I don't know. I said, okay, I can't see the ceiling. Let's get out of here. So something simple. Check your RF switches and the dummy loads, and if it's on the floor, if you have dummy loaders at the ceiling, odds are you're okay. But if it's on the floor, it's probably accumulated dust. Blow it out, because if you do have to use it and it heats up, it's going to be nasty. And the other tip I had was, those of you earlier, one of your guests mentioned the ARC, the Burke remote control stuff, and I was just recently configured a iPhone to access a Burke, and I only made the important channels available to see, so you could see it on one screen. So if you got a phone call or you got an alert that something was wrong, you could immediately look at your phone, log in, and go, oh, there's green light, red light. You know exactly what's happening. So if you have access to a Burke ARC Plus and you haven't done it yet, set it up so you can access it by phone and properly do the screen. Because before this, the screen had everything on it, as your guest mentioned, all the parameters of the transmitter. And I was like, okay, how do I get to which transmitter is on? Oh, I'm scrolling. It's like 72 channels.
Is that, I lost the very tail end of Chris. Can you hear me, Chris?
I hear you just fine.
No? Okay. Hey, we're back at the WSB transmitter site, and that's going to do it for this week in Radio Tech. I wanted to give you my tip, just a quick look here. I'm going to take the camera off the tripod that it's been on here and show you. Now, I was warned by Charles Kinney that the DSL service out here was pretty bad. And I don't know why it's bad. It's because of all the RF. Might be. I don't know. But look at what we've been doing the show through. And I know Chris Tobin has appeared with us numerous times this way. But there is a Cradle Point router with a Verizon 4G LTE stick. And we've been getting a measured, pretty consistent, 10 to 12 megabits per second down and anywhere between 7 and 10 megabits per second up. And that's what's been providing our connectivity for this show. Now, you can, if you needed connectivity at a transmitter site that's hard to get, you might be surprised at where an LTE signal is available from at least one of the carriers, whether it's Verizon, which has very good nationwide coverage. So does AT&T. I have a transmitter site I've mentioned to you before in Mound Bayou, Mississippi, which is close to the middle of nowhere, and our transmitter's out in a bean field. But we get, the first time I tested, 20 megs down, 20 megs up, consistent, probably because nobody else was using it. And even to recently, I was out there again, and I tested. I was still getting about 17 down and 12 megabits up. So it's just amazing what you can get at a transmitter site. And I know you might have monthly caps. I'm not saying that if 4G is your only method of getting data somewhere, you probably can't use that for 24/7 audio. But you can use it for remote control, for example, as Chris was just showing. If you don't have IP out there otherwise, you can use a carrier plan. We're going to have another show on the whole notion of using multiple carriers bonded together, like television stations have been doing. We're going to look at doing that for radio and see how that works out. Hey, thanks for watching. Thanks to the WSB crew and Charles Kinney especially for hosting this party, barbecue, and thanks to Telos for providing the food out here at the transmitter site. Chris, thanks for you showing up there. Enjoy Press 195, and we're going to see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye, everybody.